Have you ever tried reading someone's body language? I'm sure you have, and found that it is often difficult. And there's a good reason for that. There really is no such thing as body language. If you recall, at our last chapter, we learned about verbal communication and language, and we learned that there needs to be a set of rules that governs how a language operates. And there are not really a set of rules that allow us to interpret nonverbal messages. And so there is no such thing as body language. Instead, we're going to use the words nonverbal communication to describe what some would call body language. Now, before we dive into our definition and some of the characteristics, let me give you a note-taking tip. Communication is a big word, and there's no reason in taking notes for you to spell it out. So abbreviate, come up with your own note-taking system, a capital C or just COMM. Same thing with nonverbal, unless we're writing a formal paper, which I don't assign. N/V is a shortcut to nonverbal. So create your own note-taking tips throughout this whole course and even in all of your classes. If you get a chance, you can check out this PowerPoint directly so you can watch this video clip from an old television show called Lie to Me. It's about a crime-solving show that uses an anthropologist to help read people. It is accurate from a communication standpoint. So I love watching this video to get a good example of what reading people looks like by somebody who's really well trained and can interpret those nonverbal symbols. So this video is just going to go over our basic definition and some of the characteristics. It sets the tone for the rest of the chapter. So what is nonverbal communication? It's the symbolic behaviors other than written or spoken language. It can be intentionally or unintentionally sent as long as it is received as a meaningful message or a meaningful behavior. So anything that is spoken or written is verbal. Everything else would be nonverbal. So nonverbal has meaning. It's hard to make those interpretations or to decode those messages and determine the meaning. I want to show you a couple of statistics on percentages of verbal and nonverbal. So you're going to see this statistic here in the middle of the screen. About 93% of your communication is nonverbal. You're also going to see numbers that will say 65 or 70% is nonverbal. And so the reason why there is a difference between those two, it depends on whether they're including one particular aspect of nonverbal. And so both statistics are accurate. You'll learn more about that in our next video when we go over the types of nonverbal. But just to lay the foundation, nonverbal is mostly unconscious. It is communicated through many different channels, again, referring back to our first chapter on communication models. And we cannot consciously control all of those channels at the same time. It usually reveals or expresses our feelings and reveals our attitudes through our nonverbal. So there's lots of potential meanings in nonverbal. It's very ambiguous, it's vague, it's hard to interpret. It can be intentional or unintentional. We can accidentally send messages. Cultural differences are key. Nonverbal is going to be defined within a particular culture, and it would be defined differently outside of a particular culture. So it is not necessarily cross-cultural, although there are a couple of exceptions. It's also based on our perceived expectations. Okay. If I were to cross my arms across my chest, what does that mean? If we were in a classroom, we'd have a discussion about this, and usually students come up with about 9 or 10 possible meanings. So then how do we define what I mean when I cross my arms? Well, we have to look at contextual cues in order to help us understand it. Context is extremely important. We cannot isolate one particular nonverbal behavior and identify the exact meaning. It may take a lot more effort than we expect.